I'm standing in my own doorway at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, fever burning through my body, watching my husband Mark thrust into another woman in the bed I bought with my own money. The woman underneath him? Sarah Mitchell, the gallery owner who complimented my dress just 3 weeks ago at Mark's art show. The same woman who told me how lucky Mark was to have someone so supportive. My hands are shaking. Not from the fever anymore, but from something else entirely. Something cold and calculating that I've never felt before. They're so lost in each other, they don't even notice me standing there, watching their betrayal unfold on my Egyptian cotton sheets. But let me back up, because this story doesn't start with catching them in bed. It starts 6 months ago when I made the biggest mistake of my life, believing that love was enough to carry us both. My name is Rachel Thompson, and I've been funding my husband's dreams for 2 years while working myself into the ground. 16 2-hour days split between my morning job at the insurance office and my evening shifts at Murphy's Diner. Every paycheck went to keeping us afloat. Rent, groceries, his car payment, even his expensive art supplies. Mark was finding himself as an artist, which apparently meant sleeping until noon and painting abstract pieces that no one wanted to buy. I told myself it was temporary, that once his career took off, we'd be partners again, that all those nights I came home to find him on the couch, eating takeout I'd paid for while watching Netflix, were just part of the journey. I was so busy working and so tired when I got home that I missed the signs. Or maybe I saw them and chose to ignore them. The late night started 3 months ago. Mark would come home at 2 a.m, claiming he'd been at gallery openings or networking with other artists. His phone became glued to his hand, always face down on the table, always buzzing with messages he'd step outside to answer. New clothes appeared in his closet, expensive button-downs and designer jeans that cost more than I made in a week at the diner. "Where did you get that shirt?" I'd ask, and he'd give me some vague answer about a friend giving it to him or finding it at a thrift store. I wanted to believe him, because questioning him felt like admitting our marriage was falling apart. Then there were the arguments. Not screaming matches, but those cold, distant conversations where he'd make me feel like I was being unreasonable for asking basic questions. Like when I suggested we create a budget so I could understand where our money was going. "You're so controlling, Rachel," he'd say, that disappointed tone in his voice that made me feel like I was the problem. "I'm trying to build something here and you're treating me like a child." So I stopped asking questions. I worked harder, picked up more shifts, and convinced myself that I was investing in our future, even when I noticed the way he'd smile at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, even when I found a receipt for dinner at Romano's, an expensive Italian place we'd never been to together, folded up in his jeans pocket. The night I got sick, I was supposed to work a double shift at the diner, but around noon I started feeling dizzy and nauseous. My manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, took one look at me and sent me home. "Go rest, mija," she said. "You look like death." I drove home in a fog, planning to sleep off whatever bug I'd caught. Our apartment was quiet when I walked in, which was normal for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mark was probably still sleeping or painting in his studio space we'd converted from our spare bedroom. But as I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I heard sounds that made my blood freeze. Soft moaning, the creak of our bed, and Mark's voice saying things to someone else that he used to say to me. I should have turned around. I should have left and confronted him later, or called a lawyer, or done any number of reasonable things. Instead, I stood there and watched my husband make love to another woman, with a passion I hadn't seen from him in months. Sarah Mitchell, 30-something, auburn hair, the kind of effortless beauty that comes from having money and time for self-care. She owned the Meridian Gallery downtown, where Mark had shown some of his work. I'd met her at the opening night, and she'd been so charming, so interested in hearing about my work, so complimentary about how supportive I was of Mark's career. "You're so lucky to have someone who believes in you," she told Mark that night, her hand lingering on his arm just a beat too long. I'd noticed it then, felt a small pang of unease, but I'd pushed it down. Mark was my husband. Sarah was just being friendly. Now I could see exactly how friendly she'd been being. They moved together like they'd done this 100 times before, like they knew each other's bodies better than I knew my own. Mark's hands were in her hair, his mouth on her neck, and she was responding to him in ways that made it clear this wasn't their first time. This wasn't even their second or third time. I don't know how long I stood there watching them destroy my marriage, but eventually something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, burning in my chest like acid, but underneath it was something else, something calm and cold and calculating. I backed away from the door, walked down the stairs, and got in my car. I drove to work and told Mrs. Rodriguez I was feeling better, that I could work my shift after all. She looked at me strangely, but didn't ask questions. I spent the next 8 hours serving coffee and taking orders, acting like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something fundamental had broken and rebuilt itself in those few minutes of watching my husband betray me. The woman who had walked into that house was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone smarter, someone who understood that playing fair was a luxury I could no longer afford. When Mark came home that night at 11 p.m, he kissed my forehead like he always did, asked about my day, told me he'd spent the afternoon painting, complained about being tired. I nodded and smiled and asked if he wanted dinner, just like I had every night for 2 years. But inside, I was planning, because Mark didn't know about the inheritance from my grandmother, $50,000 I'd been saving for our future, for a down payment on a house, for the life I thought we were building together. He also didn't know that I'd been pre-approved for a mortgage months ago, back when I was still naive enough to think we'd be shopping for our dream home together. And most importantly, he had no idea that I'd been watching him and Sarah for weeks before I caught them in bed, following them, learning their patterns, discovering their plans. Because when you work 2 jobs and barely sleep, you notice things. You notice when your husband starts showering before he goes out. You notice when he starts using cologne again. You notice when he starts talking about a specific gallery owner a little too often. I'd been tracking them for 3 weeks, and I knew exactly what they were up to. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together. A future that included the beautiful Victorian house with the wraparound porch on Maple Street, the one they'd been looking at together every Sunday afternoon while I was at work. The house they'd put an offer on but couldn't actually afford. The house that was about to go back on the market because their financing had fallen through. The house that was about to become the first piece in the game they didn't even know they were playing. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Mark's peaceful breathing beside me, I realised I had a choice. I could confront him, cry, plead, try to save what was already dead. Or I could do something else entirely. I could win. The next morning, I called my realtor. Mrs. Thompson, I have to say, this is quite unusual, my realtor Janet Patterson says as she slides the paperwork across her mahogany desk. Cash offers at full asking price don't come around often, especially not with a 2-week closing timeline. I sign my name with steady hands, though inside I'm buzzing with an energy I haven't felt in years. I believe in moving quickly when I see something I want. What I don't tell Janet is that I've been parked across from 247 Maple Street every Sunday for the past month, watching Mark and Sarah hold hands as they walk through the garden, pointing at windows and dreaming about their future together. I've seen them measure the wraparound porch, discuss colour schemes for the shutters, and even argue about whether to keep the old oak tree in the backyard. That oak tree is going to stay, by the way, but they'll never know that. The sellers are thrilled, Janet continues, shuffling through the documents. The previous offer fell through just yesterday and they were getting anxious. Your timing is perfect. Perfect doesn't begin to cover it. I've been monitoring the house listing obsessively, watching Mark and Sarah's financing crumble in real time through my connections at the bank where I process insurance claims. When you handle mortgage applications all day, you learn to read between the lines. Their loan officer, Kevin, is actually a regular at Murphy's Diner, and he's been complaining about their complicated application for weeks. Gallery owner and unemployed artist, Kevin had grumbled over his coffee last Tuesday. She's got decent credit but inconsistent income, and he's got nothing but dreams. I don't know why they're even wasting my time. I'd refilled his coffee cup and made sympathetic noises. all while memorizing every detail he shared. Knowledge is power, and I was collecting it like ammunition. The house inspection happens on Thursday. I walk through the rooms alone, Janet trailing behind me as I nod approvingly at features I already know by heart. The hardwood floors that Sarah said would be perfect for entertaining. The kitchen island where Mark planned to set up his easel for better lighting. The master bedroom where they'd whispered about finally having space for a king-sized bed. The previous owners took excellent care of it, Janet says as we climb the stairs to the second floor. Though I should mention, there's a small cottage in the backyard that's been converted into a rental unit. It's been generating steady income for years. I already know about the cottage. What Janet doesn't know is that I've already researched its rental history, its current tenants, and its income potential. More importantly, I know that Mark and Sarah had been counting on that rental income to help them afford the mortgage payments they'll never get to make. How much does it bring in monthly? I ask, though I already know the answer. $1,500 a month. The current tenants are moving out next week, so you'll have the flexibility to choose your own renters. I have someone in mind already. 2 someones, actually. That evening, I sit at my kitchen table with my laptop, crafting the perfect Craigslist ad for the cottage rental. Charming, 1-bedroom cottage available immediately. Perfect for young couples starting their life together. Below market rent for the right tenants. Must provide references and proof of stable employment. I'm not just looking for tenants. I'm looking for players in the game Mark and Sarah don't know they're playing yet. The responses start coming in within hours. I scroll through dozens of applications looking for the right fit. Young couples mostly, attracted by the below-market rent and the charm of the cottage. But I'm not just looking for responsible tenants. I'm looking for something specific. I find it in application number 37. Jake and Emma Morrison, both 24, recently engaged, both working steady jobs in healthcare. But what catches my attention isn't their employment history, it's their photo. Jake has the same dark hair and build as Mark, the same artistic way of holding himself. Emma has my exact colouring, down to the auburn highlights and green eyes. They're perfect, I call them that night. I'd like to schedule a viewing for tomorrow evening. Would 7 p.m. work for you? While I'm orchestrating my rental situation, Mark is getting more careless about his affair. He's staying out later, coming home with that satisfied glow that used to be reserved for me. He's also getting more creative with his lies. I'm meeting with a potential collector tonight. He tells me Friday morning as I'm getting ready for work. Could be big for my career. I know exactly where he's going. Sarah's apartment on 5th Street, where I've seen his car parked overnight twice this week. What Mark doesn't realise is that I've been keeping a detailed log of his activities, complete with photos and timestamps. Not for a divorce lawyer. Divorce is too clean, too simple for what they've done to me. This is for something much better. That's wonderful, honey, I say, kissing his cheek. I'll probably be late too. Mrs. Rodriguez asked me to help with inventory. I'm not working late. I'm meeting with Jake and Emma Morrison at 7 p.m. And then I'm having dinner with my lawyer at 8:30. Not a divorce lawyer, a real estate lawyer who specialises in rental agreements and property management. The cottage viewing goes perfectly. Jake and Emma fall in love with the space immediately, exactly as I knew they would. The cottage is genuinely charming. Exposed brick walls, a small but functional kitchen, a cosy living area with a fireplace. It's the kind of place young couples dream about when they're planning their future together. It's perfect, Emma breathes, her hand finding Jake's as they stand in the doorway. It's exactly what we were hoping for. The rent seems too good to be true, Jake adds, though he's clearly trying not to sound suspicious of his good fortune. I believe in helping young couples get started, I tell them, which is true, just not in the way they think. I have one condition, though. I'd like you to move in next Friday. I know that's short notice, but I have my reasons. They exchange glances, the kind of silent communication that happens between people who are truly in love. I remember having that with Mark, back when I thought he was someone worth loving. We can make that work, Emma says finally. We're both so grateful for this opportunity. After they leave, I sit in the cottage alone, surrounded by the previous tenants' abandoned furniture and the ghosts of other people's happiness. In exactly 1 week, Jake and Emma will be living here, starting their life together in the space Mark and Sarah thought would be theirs. But that's still not the best part. The best part is what I'm planning for next Friday night, because that's when I'm going to invite Mark and Sarah over for dinner. Separately, of course. Mark thinks I want to discuss taking our relationship to the next level, maybe finally talking about buying a house together. Sarah thinks I want to commission a piece for my new home, something significant that could launch Mark's career. They have no idea that the house I'm about to close on is the same house they've been dreaming about together. They have no idea that their perfect cottage is about to be occupied by a couple who looks disturbingly like a younger version of Mark and me. And they have absolutely no idea that the woman they betrayed, the woman they thought was too tired and too trusting to notice what was happening under her nose, has been playing chess while they were playing checkers. As I lock up the cottage and walk back to the main house, I allow myself a small smile. In exactly 1 week, Mark and Sarah are going to learn what it feels like to have their dreams snatched away by someone who knows exactly how much those dreams are worth. The closing is scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. The dinner party is scheduled for Friday at 7 p.m. Game on. The keys to 247 Maple Street are cold in my palm as I stand on the wraparound porch Thursday evening, watching Jake and Emma Morrison unload their U-Haul into the cottage. They work together with the easy rhythm of people who are genuinely happy, completely unaware that they're about to become unwitting actors in the final act of my revenge. "Mrs. Thompson," Emma calls out, waving from the cottage doorway. "Thank you again for letting us move in early. This place is even more perfect than we remembered." I wave back, playing the role of the benevolent landlord while my phone buzzes with a text from Mark. He's been messaging me all day, excited about our relationship talk dinner tonight. If only he knew that Sarah received an almost identical invitation, scheduled for exactly 1 hour after his. The house feels different now that it's mine. Every room holds the ghost of Mark and Sarah's dreams, and I find myself savouring that knowledge as I prepare for tonight's revelations. I've spent the afternoon setting up the dining room with our wedding china, the good stuff we never used because Mark said it was too fancy for every day. Tonight seems like the perfect occasion. At 6:45 p.m, I'm putting the finishing touches on dinner when Mark's car pulls into the driveway. Through the window, I watch him check his reflection in the rearview mirror, running his hands through his hair the way he used to do before our first dates. The irony isn't lost on me that he's making an effort for what he thinks is a romantic evening with his wife, while he's been casually destroying our marriage for months. "Wow, babe," he says as he walks through the front door, looking around at the elegant dining room setup. "What's all this for?" "I thought we should celebrate," I tell him, accepting his kiss on the cheek. "I have some exciting news to share." He settles into his chair, and I can see the nervous energy in his movements. He thinks I'm about to suggest we renew our vows or talk about having children. Instead, I pour him a glass of the expensive wine I bought specifically for this occasion, a bottle that costs more than most people spend on groceries in a week. "Rachel, before you say anything, I need to tell you something," Mark begins, and for a moment, I think he's going to confess everything. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about our future." "Have you?" I ask, cutting into my steak with surgical precision. "Yeah, and I think we need to make some changes. I've been feeling confined lately, like maybe we rushed into marriage too quickly." I chew slowly, watching him squirm in his chair. "Confined how?" "Just financially, mostly. I know you've been carrying us both, and I appreciate that, but I think I need some space to figure out who I am as an artist. Maybe we should consider a trial separation." The audacity is breathtaking. He's actually trying to break up with me so he can be with Sarah, all while sitting at a table set with china I bought, eating food I prepared in a house I now own that he doesn't even know exists. "A trial separation," I repeat, setting down my fork. "How interesting. Where would you live during this separation?" "I've been looking at some options. There's this great house on Maple Street that I've had my eye on. It has a rental cottage that could provide some income, and I think the change of scenery might be good for my creativity." The wine turns bitter in my mouth, but I keep my expression neutral. That sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this. I have. And Rachel, I want you to know that this doesn't mean I don't love you. I just need to find myself. Find yourself. The same phrase he's been using for 2 years, while I've been finding ways to pay for his self-discovery. Well, Mark, it's funny you should mention that house on Maple Street, I say, reaching for my purse, because I actually have some news about that property. I pull out the deed and place it on the table between us. Mark's eyes scan the document, and I watch the exact moment he realizes what he's looking at. His face goes white, then red, then a sickly green colour that matches the drapes. You bought it? Yesterday. Cash offer, full asking price. I'm sure you remember the house. 247 Maple Street, Victorian architecture, wraparound porch, rental cottage in the back. Mark's mouth opens and closes like a fish drowning in air. Where did you get the money? From my grandmother's inheritance. You know, the one I've been saving for our future. The one I was planning to use for a down payment on our dream home. I take another sip of wine. Of course, that was back when I thought we had a future. Rachel, I don't understand. How did you even know about that house? Oh, Mark. Sweet, stupid Mark. I've known about you and Sarah for weeks. I've known about your Sunday afternoon house tours, your dinner dates, your romantic little getaways. I've known about everything. The silence stretches between us like a chasm. Mark's hand trembles as he reaches for his wine glass, and I can see him trying to calculate his next move. It's not what you think, he finally says, the most predictable lie in the cheater's handbook. Really? Because I think it's exactly what I saw when I came home sick last Tuesday and found you fucking Sarah Mitchell in our bed. The words hit him like a physical blow. You were there? I was there. I watched you with her, Mark. I watched you touch her the way you used to touch me. I watched you make love to her with a passion you haven't shown me in months. Rachel, please, let me explain. No need. I understand completely. You were confined, remember? You needed space to find yourself. Well, congratulations, you found yourself. You found yourself to be exactly the kind of man who would betray his wife while she works herself to death supporting his dreams. The doorbell rings and Mark's head snaps toward the sound. Are you expecting someone? As a matter of fact, I am. I stand up, smoothing my dress. That would be Sarah. I invited her over to discuss commissioning a piece for my new home. Sarah's coming here? Now? In about 30 seconds, I'd say. Mark jumps up from his chair, panic clear in his eyes. Rachel, you can't. Please, we need to talk about this privately. Oh, but I think all 3 of us need to have this conversation together, don't you? I walk to the front door, leaving Mark standing in the dining room like a deer in headlights. Sarah is on the porch, holding a portfolio and wearing the kind of confident smile that comes from thinking you're about to close a big deal. Rachel, thank you so much for thinking of me for this project, she says, stepping inside. I brought some examples of Mark's work that might be perfect for your space. How thoughtful of you, I say, leading her toward the dining room. I'm sure Mark will be thrilled to see you. Sarah stops dead in the doorway when she sees Mark at the table. The portfolio slips from her hands, and Mark's artwork scatters across the floor like fallen dreams. Mark? What are you doing here? Funny story, I say, closing the door behind us. Mark was just telling me about his need for space to find himself. Apparently, he's been doing a lot of that finding with you. Sarah's face goes through the same colour changes as Mark's did. Rachel, I can explain. No need. I already know everything. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I walk to the window and pull back the curtains, revealing the cottage where Jake and Emma are visible through their lit windows, unpacking their belongings and planning their future together. You see that cottage? That's where you 2 are planning to live together, generating income from the rental while you played house in my dream home. Unfortunately, that cottage is now occupied by a lovely young couple who actually deserve their happiness. Mark finds his voice. Rachel, this is insane. You can't just... I can't what? Buy a house with my own money, rent my own property to tenants of my choosing, invite my husband and his mistress to dinner to discuss the situation like civilized adults. Sarah is backing toward the door, but I'm already there, blocking her exit. Oh, Sarah, don't leave yet. We haven't discussed the best part. You see, I've been doing some research into your gallery, and I discovered some very interesting information about your business practices, tax irregularities, insurance fraud, some questionable authenticity claims about certain pieces. You wouldn't, Sarah whispers. I would, I will, unless, of course, we can come to some kind of understanding. Both of them are staring at me now, and I can see the exact moment they realise that the tired, trusting woman they thought they knew never existed at all. Here's what's going to happen, I continue, my voice steady and calm. Mark, you're going to pack your things and move out tonight. Sarah, you're going to end whatever arrangement you have with my husband and focus on running your gallery within the legal boundaries I'm sure you're familiar with. And if we don't? Mark asks, though his voice has lost all its bravado. I smile, and it's not a nice smile. Then, tomorrow morning, I make some phone calls to the IRS about Sarah's business practices, to Mark's parents about where their son has been spending his time, to everyone in your precious art community about the true nature of your relationship. The power in the room has shifted completely, and all three of us know it. But Rachel, Sarah says desperately, you can't just destroy people's lives like this. Destroy lives? I laugh, and it's a sound I barely recognise. You destroyed mine first. I'm just returning the favour with interest. The clock on the mantel chimes 8 p.m, and I know that in exactly 12 hours I'll be sitting in this same dining room, eating breakfast and planning my new life as the owner of the house they thought they'd stolen from me. Now, I say, opening the front door, I believe both of you have some packing to do. 3 months later, I'm sitting on my wraparound porch with my morning coffee, watching Jake and Emma Morrison tend to their garden in the cottage yard. They've painted the shutters a cheerful yellow and hung wind chimes that catch the morning breeze. From here, they look like the perfect young couple living their perfect young life. If only they knew the truth. My phone buzzes with a text from my lawyer. Settlement finalised. Meridian Gallery officially under new ownership as of today. Congratulations, Rachel. I smile, setting the phone aside. The gallery acquisition was easier than I'd expected. When your business is already teetering on the edge of financial ruin and someone offers to buy you out of your legal troubles, you don't ask too many questions. Sarah signed the papers yesterday, her hands shaking as she transferred ownership of everything she'd built to the woman whose life she'd helped destroy. What she doesn't know yet is that I'm not planning to run the gallery. I'm planning to turn it into something much more interesting. The sound of arguing voices drifts from the cottage, and I lean forward in my chair. Jake and Emma are having their first real fight, and from what I can hear, it's about money. Specifically, about Jake's recent obsession with painting, and his suggestion that Emma pick up extra shifts at the hospital to support his artistic awakening. How perfectly predictable. My phone rings, and I'm not surprised to see Mark's name on the screen. He's been calling every few days for the past month, ever since he moved in with his parents, and started working at his father's hardware store. I usually don't answer, but today I'm feeling generous. Hello, Mark. Rachel, please, we need to talk. I've been doing some thinking, and I realise I made a terrible mistake. Just one mistake? That's interesting. I count at least 47 separate betrayals. But who's keeping track? I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but this has gone too far. Sarah lost her gallery, I lost my studio space, and now I'm hearing rumours that you're planning to open some kind of revenge museum in her old building. The Revenge Museum. I'd forgotten he might hear about that. It's not a revenge museum, Mark. It's an art installation. I'm calling it the Betrayal Collection, a multimedia experience exploring the intersection of trust, deception, and consequences. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. I've commissioned several artists to create pieces based on real stories of infidelity and betrayal. Your story with Sarah will be the centerpiece, of course. I have photographs, text messages, even audio recordings from some of your more intimate moments. The silence on the other end of the line is deafening. You've been recording us? Oh, Mark, did you really think I spent all those weeks just passively watching you two? I've been documenting everything, every lie, every secret meeting, every moment of your betrayal. It's all going to be displayed for the public to see, right alongside the receipts for every penny I spent supporting your dreams. Rachel, you can't do this. There are laws. About recording conversations in public spaces, about displaying public records, about using legally obtained photographs. I've checked, Mark, very thoroughly. I can hear him breathing heavily on the other end. What do you want from me? I want you to understand something. 3 months ago, you told me you felt confined by our marriage. You wanted space to find yourself. Well, congratulations. You found yourself. You found yourself to be exactly the kind of man who would destroy the one person who loved him most. Please, Rachel, I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make this right. Anything. I stand up and walk to the porch railing, looking down at the cottage where Jake and Emma's argument is escalating. Then, tell me about your conversations with Jake Morrison. Another silence. Longer this time. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Jake Morrison, my tenant in the cottage, about 6 feet tall, dark hair, works at the hospital. The one who's been coming to your father's hardware store every weekend for the past month, buying art supplies and talking about his dreams of becoming a painter. I can practically hear Mark's world crumbling through the phone. You see, Mark, Jake reminds me so much of you when we first met. Young, passionate, full of dreams about making it as an artist. And Emma reminds me of myself, hardworking, supportive, willing to sacrifice everything for love. It's like looking into a mirror of our past. Rachel, what did you do? I didn't do anything. I simply created an environment where certain patterns could repeat themselves. Jake's been struggling with his painting, feeling frustrated and confined by his relationship with Emma. He's been looking for someone to understand his artistic vision, someone who believes in his potential. You're insane. Am I? Or am I simply giving people the opportunity to show their true nature? Jake sought me out, Mark. He came to me for advice about his art, his relationship, his future, and I've been very supportive, very understanding, very available. The truth is, Jake Morrison is nothing like Mark. He's actually a decent person who loves Emma and has no intention of cheating on her. Their argument this morning was about him wanting to surprise her with a painting he's been working on in secret, not about him abandoning his responsibilities to chase artistic dreams. But Mark doesn't know that. Mark only knows his own capacity for betrayal, and he's projecting that onto every other man in every other relationship. You're manipulating them, he says, his voice hoarse. I'm offering Jake the same support I once offered you, the same understanding, the same encouragement, the same willingness to believe in his dreams. If that leads to the same outcome, well, perhaps the problem was never with me? Rachel, please, don't do this to them. They're innocent. Were we innocent when we started, Mark? Were we pure and perfect and deserving of happiness? Or were we just two people trying to build something together until one of us decided to tear it all down? Through the cottage window, I can see Jake and Emma embracing. Their argument resolved. He's showing her the painting he's been working on, a portrait of her in the garden, surrounded by the flowers they planted together. She's crying, but they're happy tears. The thing is, Mark, I've learned something important over the past 3 months. Not everyone is like you. Not everyone is willing to destroy the person who loves them most for the sake of their own selfish desires. What are you saying? I'm saying that Jake Morrison is a better man than you ever were. He's been tempted, tested, and he's chosen his relationship over his ego every single time. Emma is lucky to have him. Then why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to understand the difference between a man who deserves love and a man who destroys it. Jake deserves Emma. You never deserved me. I can hear Mark crying now. Soft sobs that might have once moved me to comfort him. Now they just sound like the pathetic whimpering of a man who's finally facing the consequences of his choices. The gallery opening is next Friday at 7 p.m, I tell him. The public is invited to view the Betrayal collection. I think you'll find it very enlightening. Rachel, wait, I hang up and turn off my phone. Down in the cottage, Jake and Emma are dancing in their kitchen, completely unaware that they've been part of an elaborate test they passed without even knowing they were taking it. My name is Rachel Thompson, and I'm sitting on the porch of the house that was supposed to be theirs, watching a couple who reminds me of who I used to be before I learned that love without respect is just another form of slavery. Next Friday, their entire city will see Mark and Sarah's story displayed in living colour. They'll see the photographs, read the text messages, hear the audio recordings of their betrayal. They will understand exactly what it costs to break someone who trusted you with everything. But, more importantly, they'll see what happens when someone who's been broken decides to rebuild themselves into something stronger. The wind chimes in the cottage yard play a gentle melody, and I raise my coffee cup in a toast to the young couple who proved that not all love stories have to end in betrayal. Some of them end in justice, and some of them are just beginning.